died suddenly after sniffing a can of butane gas.
Our son Jay died in February this year, inhaling butane gas from a canister that he bought. It was instant death. It was sudden death.
Using this stuff is just like playing Russian roulette. It's like playing with a loaded gun.
We've been collecting data on deaths from volatile substance abuse for a long time. The last year for which we had data was 1997, in which there were 73 deaths, 41 of which were caused by butane cigarette lighter refills. And those deaths are much more common than those caused by all other forms of drug abuse put together.
This was a substance that wasn't illegal. It was readily obtainable from an obliging shopkeeper round the corner who was quite happy to be onto a nice little earner. But what price do you put on a life? You know, £1 in David's case, just about £1.
Over a third of youngsters who die have no previous abuse record.
There are lots of cases of first-time deaths. Instant deaths.
What happened with Nick was that it was only the second time he'd ever sprayed butane gas in his mouth. The first time he'd done it, it had made him ill, and he said that he would never do it again. But unfortunately, he did it again, and 10 minutes after spraying it into his mouth, he just fell dead on the floor.
The youngsters die from sudden sniffing death syndrome, a well-recognised medical syndrome. And this means that the heart stops beating rhythmically, it stops pumping blood, it behaves chaotically. And unless something drastic is done on the spot, unless they're given an electric shock, they're defibrillated, they're dead within 10 or 15 minutes.
There's an awful lot of ignorance around about precisely how dangerous the abuse of volatile substances can be. We know that retailers are not fully aware of the consequences of selling solvents to young children.
In a shop of this size, we have about 11 tills and we have about 100 staff, so you can appreciate that it can be difficult to get the message across.
There's also ignorance amongst parents who often don't know why their children have these products and what they're doing with them.
I didn't know that it was possible to get high on butane of any sort.
I didn't know how it could kill you.
It's the kids. They need to know what this can do, because I'm sure if they knew that this could happen to them, I'm sure they wouldn't do it.
I don't think David knew of anybody who had died of it. I really don't believe that he could have been as foolhardy as to risk his life. But then all young people think they're invincible.
I think butane's become important because it's convenient. It's present in cigarette lighter refills, present as a propellant in aerosols too. It's easily obtainable. It's relatively cheap. It produces a high which comes on quickly and wears off quickly, so your parents probably don't know you're doing it.
We didn't know about the butane. We didn't really know what we were looking for.
They say that you can detect signs, you know, moodiness, lethargy, spots around the mouth, but all these are signs of just normal adolescence anyway.
With other volatile compounds, we see youngsters in the community being intoxicated because they have a longer duration of action. They have road accidents, they drown, they fall off buildings, whereas the only side effect for sniffing butane is death.
After Jay died, when the police searched the room, we discovered, I think it was about 9 empty tins of butane, which we obviously had no idea was there. So he had been doing it for some time. We know now that Jay went into a newsagent's in town and actually purchased a canister of lighter fuel. He then, from there, went to a local toilet, public toilet, and inhaled some of the gas from the canister. He collapsed immediately, and he was probably dead by the time they got him to hospital. We actually met the person who sold him the canister during the inquest.
The police had already told us beforehand that she was one of the few people that kept a refusal register.
This young man was very confident, very well dressed, and I assumed he was a young university student over 18. I never would have thought that he would abuse. This incident's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. It really shocked me. I was quite shaken up. Why did I not see? Why did I not think that this young man will go and abuse or do what he did?
I think you'd have to lose a child yourself to really understand how great a loss something like that can be. You just feel as if your whole world has been smashed.
It's like losing a limb, and you have the phantom pain of the loss of that limb. You think it's still there, and it still gives you pain.
In the last couple of years in Derby, where I work, we've had 3 deaths, all under the age of 16, caused by nothing else than butane substance abuse. Nobody has ever been prosecuted, and that saddens me greatly.
The existing legislation is the Intoxicating Substances Supply Act. That creates an offence when retailers sell volatile substances to people under the age of 18, knowing they're going to be abused.
One of these canisters lasts somebody up to a year. Now, if a youngster's going into a shop continually, every night, 3 or 4 times a night, buying canisters of butane, that shopkeeper must be asking themselves questions. And if they're not, they're doing something wrong. The biggest problem is proving that the supplier knows the person is under 18 or has reasonable grounds to believe it's under 18, and also it's been used for intoxication. So to get convictions, it's very difficult under the present legislation.
Under the new legislation, in force from October 1999, you cannot sell cigarette lighter refills containing butane to anybody under the age of 18. Full stop.
The existing legislation will still be in place, but the new legislation will make it a lot easier to gain convictions, because all we've got to do now is prove that that person was selling to somebody under 18.
Youngsters, of course, can buy cigarettes at 16, but they're not going to be allowed to buy the lighter fuel till 18. But that is quite deliberate because very many of the deaths are in the range of 16 to 18.
The penalty for non-compliance is a maximum fine of £5,000, a prison sentence of 6 months. In addition, you could face a civil lawsuit in the case of personal injury or death. You could even find that you are banned from trading by the courts.
I can see there's still going to be problems with people not knowing how old teenagers are. I mean, some of them look far beyond their years.
The key to avoiding prosecution is ensuring that you've got identification that the person is actually over 18.
Whenever you ring up anything for underage selling, there's a warning that comes up to make you look at the customer. If you don't think they're of age, you have to ask for ID.
There are specific proof of identity cards which are now becoming widely available.
Retailers can make sure that they've got plenty of signs around showing that it is an offence for them to sell to people under 18, and it's essential that the retailer makes it quite clear, no ID, no sale.
If you are dealing with people who are seeking to purchase solvents, it may well be that they are hardened abusers, desperate to obtain the product. And clearly the retailer could find themselves in a difficult situation.
Obviously, they've got to get the manager involved, and the manager may well, on occasions, have to call in the police.
We're there to help them. We're not there to get people convicted of an offence, but we want the new legislation to prevent young people dying. And if necessary, we will take people to court.
If a retailer willfully breaches this legislation, they're taking an immense risk, both financial and in terms of their business future. We will undertake test purchasing programs to assess whether people are selling to young people. If they sell, they will be prosecuted.
If a retailer sells butane gas to youngsters, they are, in many cases, giving them a death sentence.
His 2 older brothers have graduated from university. We'll never see that day for David. His graduation is of a completely different kind.
It's not quite 6 months since Jay died. It's like a void in your life. It really is painful.
Jay was our only child. He was my parents' only grandchild. And for the last 16 years, all our lives have revolved around him. And just in the click of a finger, he's gone and he's not there anymore. And your life is just totally different. And you just miss him so much.